Since you have written a memoir before, so I was wondering this, do you feel like fiction is actually more honest in some ways because you can say things without directly saying it happened to you?
It's a really interesting question, and no one has ever asked me that before. I love the question. Memoirs, the ones that really cut to the bone, you know that it is a real story. I think that they're extremely effective storytellers, and as an audience reading it, you get super drawn into what they're talking about because you're picturing their face. You know that this is, I have a whole shelf of memoirs here, like Tara Westover and Educated or mine. I'm looking at all these covers as I'm talking to you, and I remember how exciting it was to read those books and reread them. However, the best fiction writers are going to make you forget that what you're reading isn't real.
Exactly.
You're going to be picturing everything in your head. You're going to picture what that character looks like because it's been vividly drawn for you. They have frizzy hair, or they walk with a limp, or they have, their complexion is scarred. You have it. And so you are really super drawn into that, and you lose yourself in the best fiction.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Pages of Pandora, the show where we talk about stories and the authors behind them. While I was reading Weirdo's Welcome, I kept stopping because so much of it felt like mirror to what's happening in our world right now. The anxiety, the pressure to mask who we are, and that desperate search for a tribe. Today I am talking with Cynthia Baseman. She has written a story about Braden and Rae, two kids who are navigating anxiety, autism, and absolute chaos of being a teenager. But what's even more cooler is that Cynthia's own journey with healing and humanity is baked right into these pages. So, welcome to the podcast, Cynthia.
Thank you so much for having me.
My first question is that I personally feel like some stories can only be written after you have lived through those experiences, Like you need that emotional memory. So, do you think your writing came out stronger because of the life you lived before? Especially something like Weirdo's Welcome?
Well, I definitely will tell you that I love movies and books that have a very personal edge to them, that are character driven. And this is my debut fiction novel. And so to write about something so character driven, I felt like this had to be something that was from my real life. And there are people that are very close to me that, although they are not these characters, they have had some of the same struggles. And I thought that, well, I think that anything that is entertaining is filled with conflict. And these people's lives were and are still filled with conflict, and I wanted to explore it.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. So, it is inspired by real life events, right?
It is inspired by real life events and people, yes, but it's not really just one person. Once I became interested in the topic of mental health and neurodiversity, then I really felt very strongly that I wanted to get the story right. So I interviewed a lot of people, a lot, just to make sure, because you want to be respectful. You want to treat the material with tender hands.
Right. So while reading, I kept thinking that does not feel imagined. It feels very observed or even felt. So did you ever catch yourself writing a scene or thinking like, okay, this is getting a little bit too personal, even if it's not directly your story?
Well, not really, because the only time I would feel like maybe something was getting too personal is if I was literally writing, say, a memoir or nonfiction, and I was literally like treading on somebody's life for real. These are fictional characters. All of them are fictional characters. And while, like every writer will tell you, I am my character is me. There is, of course, there is some of that. There has to be, right?
Yeah, right.
But no, I never had a moment where I felt like it was too personal. That didn't happen.
Okay. Since you have written a memoir before, so I was wondering this, do you feel like fiction is actually more honest in some ways because you can say things without directly saying it happened to you?
Well, it's a really interesting question, and no one has ever asked me that before. I love the question. I really do. I think in the best memoirs, the ones that really like cut to the bone, you know that it is a real story. And therefore, I think that they are extremely effective storytellers. And as an audience reading it, you get super drawn into what they're talking about because you're picturing their face. You know that this is, I have a whole shelf of memoirs here, like, say, Tara Westover and Educated, or, oh God, there's so many good ones.
Wow, Educated is one of my favorite books.
Mind. I mean, I'm looking at all these covers as I'm talking to you, and I remember how exciting it was to read those books and reread them. However, the best fiction writers are going to make you forget that what you're reading isn't real.
Exactly.
You're going to be picturing everything in your head. You're going to picture what that character looks like because it's been vividly drawn for you. If they have frizzy hair, or they walk with a limp, or they have, their complexion is scarred. You have it, and so you are really super drawn into that, and you lose yourself in the best fiction.
Right, I kind of agree with that because fiction gives you a lot of variety. And one thing I genuinely appreciated that the teenage voice didn't feel forced at all. And I feel like it's where a lot of books struggle. So, how did you get that tone so right? Were you observing people, listening, or just tapping into something internal?
Well, the tone is something that I think is like a painter. You have your canvas, and you are got your brush strokes, and you really have to continuously refine and rewrite to know that you have reached a consistent tone. I think that is one of the biggest challenges to a writer, is to find that tone. I mean, you can write about a gorgeous setting, or you can introduce us to a fantastic villain, but to get the tone right is something that requires constant attention throughout the writing of the book. And it's not something you really see in an outline. And I don't think most writers are like stream of consciousness. Most people do some kind of outline, even if it's brief. And it really happens once you get your hands into it. Then you really need to, well, for me, one of the tricks is reading out loud. Taking the time, picking up your work and reading it out loud. And you kind of hear it when you step off the edge and you missed it, right? And you tripped. You kind of hear it. Of course, writers groups are very important for that too. If you have some trusted readers or fellow authors that you meet with, and they can be with you on your journey, then that's all very helpful to have. Right. As far as tone is concerned.
I was also thinking about Ray's blog, how she expresses herself more freely online, and I see this a lot. People are doing more honest on online than in real life. So, do you think social media is actually helping people find their voices, or is it just giving them some safer space to hide?
That is an amazing question. Really, very astute and very timely question.
Thank you.
I believe it depends on who that person is. I know from talking to a lot of young ladies who are on the spectrum, they love the freedom of being able to express themselves online because I think they have control over their environment. They decide when they're going to do it, how they're going to do it, that they're comfortable at that time. They don't feel distracted or stressed by other things, and they can have a certain clarity that they bring to it. So I think it's tremendously freeing, especially for people who are neurodiverse. I also see the dark side for other people who either get out of touch because this is handy and being online is you can curate your life and make it look like something. Maybe that's your life for 5% of the time. You know, maybe it's beautiful and you're wearing the right outfit and your hair looks great that day, and you just had your teeth cleaned and they're pearly white, and you can hide and not really be your authentic self on there. And I think it's the dark side, because it's not real. It's not authentic. It sends a message to other people that they're not good enough. And so I don't like that. You lose the vulnerability. So whereas I think a lot of people use it in a very healthy manner, I think others use it in a very unhealthy manner for themselves and also for those that are viewing them, because it sends across a message that is not really, it's just not sustainable. And I think it makes people feel bad about themselves.
Right, I kind of agree with that. And with another character, Braden, what really hit me is how his anxiety doesn't look extreme. It looks very normal. And I feel like that's kind of scary because so many people function like that every day and nobody notices. So, do you think we have normalized anxiety to the point where we don't even recognize it anymore?
I think it gets diminished in terms of its importance. So when people do have real mental hurdles that they face all the time, and they try so hard to make it look like everything is okay on the surface, all that energy expended on not being singled out and not being, you know, the freak and not being weird and not being odd, and I don't know why the issues of anxiety have exploded in our time. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a sociologist, I'm not a psychologist. I just know, just being an observer and asking questions about what's happening and reading, like you are a voracious reader, I am too. I don't know exactly why it is the way it is, but the pace of life has gotten very, very fast, and it's really hard for a lot of people to stay on top of it. And I think that is a pretty corrosive thing, that it should never be normalized. It should be understood. It should be recognized and understood, not normalized, not diminished, not, oh yeah, everybody's stressed, or everybody's a nervous wreck, or, that just doesn't help.
My next question is, we are more connected than ever: phone, internet, constant communication, but at the same time, people feel more alone. And both your characters, Braden and Rae, carry that loneliness in a different way. So, why do you think that disconnect still exists?
If somebody is naturally introverted or they're naturally extroverted, I think it can exacerbate all those characteristics that make us human and distinguish us from one another. And I think in some respects, we have to work harder to keep the connections alive. And my book deals with young adults. And my book kind of deals with people who are at a time in their lives where they're one step still in childhood and one step in adulthood. And I think that I'm interested in that time period as it relates to some of these questions you're asking. That is an opportunity, a wonderful opportunity for people to discover themselves and how they want to relate to others, and what it looks like to be healthy and happy and have the right amount of communication that makes relating to other people satisfying and comforting and feel safe, and establishing some trust that, you know, most humans are good and are deserving of our trust. And the technology should not be used in a way that distances us. And it's very tempting. Even though it's so easy to stay in touch, you can also be very flip in a text, you know, and you can read a text and it could be read, speaking of tone, 50 different ways. Could be, someone could text you and you could read it as them being ambivalent about something, or they're distracted, or they're stressed. It's almost impossible to know for sure. So I don't like the reliance on technology as a way for people, especially young people, to deal with one another, because you know, there's this whole joke about, you know, you don't call that person. No, you have to text them. But that's why. Who decided that it was only cool to text and it was uncool to call? Like, how did that even become a thing?
Right.
I think we have to work hard around that.
Right, I kind of agree with that. My next question is, a lot of people listening to this are either writers or people who want to write but keep overthinking a lot. And I think I relate to that a lot. So, what would you say to someone who feels like they have something to say but still they keep holding themselves?
Okay. So, my advice is to set aside a little time for yourself every single day. All of us have responsibilities to ourselves, to families, to friends, to jobs. You have to devote a little time every day to yourself to do something toward that end. If you have a story that you want to tell it. Don't find excuses. Don't let life get in the way, because everyone's busy. Everyone is tired after work. No one wants to wake up so early. But if you do one of those things, which is either get up first thing before your phone is ringing and before you have to show up at your job or show up for your kids or your sister or your mother or whatever it is that you're doing. And I don't care if it's 10 minutes or it's an hour. If you do it every day, you will move in the right direction and you will start your writing path. That's all I can say. And if you aim for 7 days a week and it only ends up being like 4 or 5 times a week that you actually do it, that's fine. Don't beat up on yourself, okay? But I say aim for 7, because if you aim for 7, you got a pretty good chance to get to 4 or 5.
Right, that's a very practical advice you gave. I want to ask one more question, which is, what was the hardest part of your writing journey?
And I'd say the hardest part about writing is everything. It's showing up for yourself every day. It's rewriting. It's committing the time to doing it correctly. It is challenging yourself all the time, and it's also taking time away from the people that you love. You have to sacrifice some of that, and I think that's really tough. I'm just very excited to know that somebody on the other side of the world has already read my book and related to it, and that there's universal themes in it that are cross-cultural. I think that makes me really, really happy. I wasn't really thinking about that when I wrote this, and it's something that just came out of the story organically. So I'm very thrilled that I got to meet you.
I'm glad. It's pleasure talking to you, and you have written a brilliant book. And I would say to everyone that do check out the book. It's available on Amazon. It's Weirdos Welcome. You can also connect with the author on Instagram. Also check out the website to connect with her and check more creative journey of her. Thank you so much.
Thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Ariba. All right, get some sleep.
Yes. Bye bye.
Okay.